How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. If you know what this is, great. If you're new here, we are doing a bench critique. I've got some videos here we're going to critique and look at. So without further ado, let's get going. So periodically throughout the weeks and months, I get people that send me benches that they want me to critique. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got 3 videos here that I'm going to start with, and we're going to look at them and see what we can see. So the first video is a gentleman doing a 700-pound, looks like a 2-board press. So let's go ahead and run the video. We'll talk about it afterwards. So right out the gate, we'll just look at the very beginning of the video before we even hit play. So he's on a Forza bench. He's in a gym. Looks like it's a powerlifting-oriented gym. There's actually 2 Forzas, one right in front of the other. This Forza does have the face savers that they do make, those silver pieces that are jutting out from the upward supports of the bench. So that's good. I would like to see them actually come up. They're not going to do much being below your body. You want them to be high. That way, if you do happen to miss, if the spotters can't get it off of you, the bar is just going to come down a little bit. It might make contact with your body, but it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to crush you or anything like that. So he's on a Forza bench. He's got an Inzer Bolt. Now the Inzer Bolt is a single ply shirt. You can definitely see that through the markings on the side. It's Inzer, and then it's got the weird emblem here on the sleeve. Inzer's got tons of different emblems they put on their shirts. Inzers are the bolts anyway, are single ply only. I don't think Inzer makes 2-ply. So this is a single ply bolt. And he's got the block on there. It's not a board that somebody's going to hold. It's got the bench block. It's a board that you stick onto the bar itself. So you can do boards if you train alone. That's actually pretty cool. Anderson Powerlifting does sell those as well. So he's going to get a 3-person handoff, which is generally that's how you would do it with heavier weight. They put the bar right where he needs it. Now, if you see how the spotter, the middle guy is going to have his hands around the bar the whole time. Now, that's how we train as well. I'm not a huge fan of letting go of the bar and just taking a step back in training, taking a step back and watching. I want to be right on that bar when it comes to training. That way, if something does happen, I am right there. I can take it. I can put it back in the rack. No injuries. On the platform, when it's competition time, whole different story. But this is a training video. So he's coming down. He touched the board. Touched his. It's weird to say it's a board press, and the board is touching him. But that is how it works with these things. So after he gets the board to touch his chest, he initiates the press, and then the lockout's not really there. Now it is 700 pounds. I'm not sure if this gentleman has benched this in competition yet. We talked. I think he's trying to bench this here in a few months. But the lockout isn't quite there. When the bar leaves, when everything leaves his body, you can actually see him taking some breaths. He's actually inhaling and exhaling during the lift. So what I'm seeing, and I know they're called board presses. They've been called that for the last 40 or 50 years. I get it. But I really try to get people to rethink when it comes to boards and equipped lifters. This is especially hard to teach, and I see boards being done incorrectly all the time, both raw and equipped. The equipped guys, I'm guilty of this myself, tend to do it incorrectly the most often. So when I see boards doing it, what I mean by that is incorrectly, is when they touch, let's just reference the board, let's get rid of the block. Let's just say someone's holding a board on a lifter. When they touch the board, it's called a board press. They want to press the bar off, right? And they want to use the equipment as well. They're going to use the equipment and push, and then the lockout is always kind of like not there. It's like, well, it's limited range of motion. It should be there. But that's because they're pushing. They're not, what I'm going to say, extending. They're not extending the weight off of the boards. Board presses are a great way to develop massive tricep strength, right? But if you don't do the boards correctly, if all you're doing is touching and pressing and not extending off the boards, you're not going to develop that tricep strength that you need to carry over to the full range of motion. So again, he gets the bar moving, and then towards the lockout, I think he ends up locking it out all the way, but it was definitely a struggle. I would say that is definitely a max effort lift for sure. True max effort means 1 rep. If you can do it for 2 or 3, I know we reference it as being max effort, but max effort does mean like it's 100%, it's 1 rep. And that was definitely a max lift. So the biggest thing I would have to say is definitely he needs to learn how to touch a boards or bring boards down. In this case, he's got the block stuck to the bar. When you bring the boards down and touch, yes, you're in a shirt. Yes, it's called a board press, but you need to touch and learn to engage with triceps first. Not because there's this cue that we use in powerlifting. When you get to the top of the bench, to activate the triceps, start to rip the bar apart, start to try to spread the bar in half to activate the triceps. And I argue, why wait till the end? Why not do that at the beginning? If you can get the triceps going at the beginning of the lift, and then press, you now have a tricep dominant press, rather than heave hoeing the bar up till more than halfway, and the triceps are not ready to catch the weight. That's why a lot of times you see a lift being done in 2 motions on the way up. Coming down nice and smooth, comes up, it stops, and then they have to fight that second half, like up, like 2 motions. It's because they're heave-hoeing, they're using the equipment till all that shit gives out, and then, oh, now I need to activate triceps, and then they have to struggle to activate the triceps. Why wait till the end? Activate triceps at the beginning of the lift, so you have a tricep dominant press, and the triceps are ready to catch that weight at the top and come up in one nice, clean, smooth motion. Looking at the press again, I wouldn't see it. I'd like to see him keep that tucked position. As you can see, when he's bringing the bar down, his elbows are tucked to the side, which is what we're supposed to do. External rotation. You don't want to be internally rotated at any point, except the very, very top of the motion. That lockout portion, we can lock out more weight with an internally rotated position than we can tucked. So when you come down, people tuck, and then on the way back up, they flare out at the very, very top to lock the weight out. A good way to try that is if you do rack lockouts in the gym, tuck and try to lock some weight out, and now take that same weight and flare and lock it out. You can lock out more weight with a flared position. But he does seem to, when he launches off the chest, he does seem to flare pretty early. I would like to see a more tucked position longer and then flare at the very top. That's why football players, they tackle with a tucked position. They don't tackle like this. This is a very powerful, tucked position is very, very powerful. So you want to maintain that for as long as possible. That's pretty much it. Everything else looks pretty good. He's safe. He's got his 3 spotters. Face saver's got to come up a little bit. I'm a real stickler when it comes to safety, especially in the gym. Competition should be no-brainer. I think it's irresponsible of meet directors to have benches without face savers. That should be required across the board. But you do sign a waiver that if you do get hurt, they're not liable. So I just I call ahead and say, what kind of bench we using? Do we have face savers? No, sorry to waste your time. Find another competition. So went down a rabbit hole there, but we're back. And so good lift anyway, 700 pounds and a single ply polyester from a 2 board. And this gentleman is trying to bench that here in the next few months. Best of fortunes to him, and good lift. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so right out the gate, again, he looks like he's in the basement. Kind of a partly finished basement. He does a lot of this lifting by himself, or sometimes he might have a couple of guys there for support, at least on the side spots, which is good. We talk extensively. He's always on my lives when I go live on Instagram and things like that. So he's doing the classic self handoff where he has his ass very far off the bench, really trying to put himself in as high or as low of a decline position as possible to get that bar out of the rack. Now he is in a shirt. I believe he's using a single ply katana, or it might be a single ply F6. I can't remember. So he does have the protection there. The thing with self handoffs is that you are risking your shoulders. They're not great for shoulder health, but if you do have the protection of a bench press shirt, generally it might be okay if you can do it effectively. Now the problem is somebody will get perfect position, and when they try to do a self handoff, their shoulders come out of position in an effort to get the bar out of the rack. They're trying to do this. The shoulders coming forward rather than keeping everything pinched. So that's the one thing that you risk with a self handoff, is that the weight looks to be about 455 or 425. Can't tell if that's a 10 or a 25 on the side. It's a little bit dark. We'll call it 455. We'll give him that. He's got, again, a bench block. Perfect way to do boards if you are lack thereof a board holder. They're called bench blocks. There's two of them. One is a one board, half board height, and then the other one that's bigger, he looks like he has the one board, half board. The other one that's bigger has 2, 3, 4, and 5 board height. So it's a good way to train board. Not the best way. I have a pair. I don't particularly like them. I prefer the actual real boards, but in a situation where you do not have a board holder, absolutely a great way to do it. So when he starts his descent, he has a perfect position. He's got that nice, wide, steady base. His feet are kind of spread out and back a little bit towards his head. He's got a good arch going, so he's probably using an angled sleeve super katana or F6 to account for his arch. He's going to bring the weight down, nice and steady. He's got a good touch. Looks like he's using looks like the one board height. So we're going to say this is a one board height. Now, on the way up, everything looks pretty clean. The one thing he's doing, he's pushing with his legs, which you are absolutely supposed to do. This is a full body lift. This is not just seeing how strong you can be like this. You're using your entire body. It's like a squat laying down. There's just a hair, just a little itty bitty bit. Looks like the ass wants to come off the bench almost. Now, the problem with leg drive, and the one thing I would change if I were, say, in person, is leg drive, it tends to be people try to push straight down into the floor. And when you push straight down, the adverse force is going to be straight up. Your ass is going to go straight up off the bench. So what you want to try to do instead is not push straight down. You want to have your legs slightly more out in front of you, and you're trying to push away. You're trying to push yourself up the pad by pushing away, down but away. If you were stuck to the pad, if you were in the bench were one, and you were trying to move yourself across a floor, you wouldn't push straight down onto the floor. You'd kind of push yourself away, trying to push yourself across the floor. That's what you want to do with leg drive. So you can see his shins are, if not straight up and down, they're actually angled back a little bit towards his body. I would prefer to see not even a straight up and down shin, but shins that are slightly angled out, away from the body. That way you don't have a tendency to push straight down. You have a tendency to push away while maximizing that leg drive. You can push it with your legs all you want, as long as you keep it legal and the ass is in contact with the pad. It's a legal bench. I mean, it wasn't a mile high like it was in the beginning during his handoff. Now I've seen people that go to do a leg drive in the bench, and on the handoff right there, that's what they end up doing. So, but again, he's working in his environment as best as he can. He's alone. He's trying to, he has to do that position to get himself handed off. And there's not a whole lot you could, maybe he's under max load. You could maybe, after you get your hand off, maybe kind of inchworm your legs out more into a better position, but that's just, you don't want to try to do that under your max load. So because he has the ability to bring, I can't physically do that. That's impressive actually, but because he has the ability to lift his ass that high off the bench with that leg position, he's going to have that problem if he pushes too hard with his legs, that he might end up pushing and having his ass raise, and have a red light or a couple of red lights for that. He's coming down nice and low. He's in a katana and everything. You want to tuck and bring the bar low towards at least the top of the abs, if not I bench even lower, middle of the stomach. So he's got a good touch point. Everything's firing correctly. He's activating the triceps, and you can see at the very top he's got a nice definitive lockout. So it's a great lift, great training lift, heavy weight for him. Notice his face savers. He's got them up. If you look at where the bar makes contact on the far side, if he had to drop that bar, it would literally probably only fall maybe an inch. So he's got those face savers up where they need to be. If they were lower, I'd be worried. If he gets in trouble, especially being alone in your basement, countless stories on the internet of people dying in their basements alone because they were trying to bench press too heavy. Bar ends up on their chest if it's really heavy, or their stomach, or worse on their neck, and they end up dying. So he doesn't have clips on the side, so if he was, I don't think, it's pretty dark. It doesn't look like he has clips. So if he was in dire trouble, you could do the whole lean the bar over, plates fall off this side, then the bar catapults and falls off that side. But he does have his face. He always uses them. I see a lot of his videos. He always uses his face savers, like a smart person. That's great. So they're never not there. And occasionally, like I mentioned, he does have side spotters. There's not anything else besides the leg position and the ass kind of wanting to come up rather than back. That's the one thing I would change. But the actual press itself, I mean, for being shirted and being alone and doing a self handoff, magnificent lift. Very good training lift. Looking forward to seeing a lot more from him. So that's it. We're going to move on to the third and final video of the day. Okay, so this is another shirted bench. My lighting is terrible. I'm sorry, but I am in my living room and it's not a good studio. So it's a shirted bench. It looks, I can see on the arm that you can see, it's torqued. It looks like a torque seam, which tells me this is a katana. It is blue as well. I have a blue single ply katana myself, and he's not wearing a belt. I never wear a shirt without a belt. That's the one thing. If you position the shirt in a certain spot and then you're doing a bench, there's nothing stopping that shirt from then riding up more because there's not a belt down here to cinch it down. So he does not have a belt on, which is fine. This looks to be, this is sent to me a long time ago. It looks like it's probably about 6 plates plus a 10, maybe 2 10s, so somewhere between 605, 625. Let's see. He's got a Thompson fat pad, looks like. I see the red lettering there. It's a Dynabody bench. Fantastic. And, hey, there's face savers on the bench. And they are high up there. They're not quite, it's a board press, board extension, but it's a board press, so you could have the face savers higher than normal because you're stopping the bar short. And so if something went wrong up here, you want the face savers to be up here to match it. So they could be a little higher, but that's just me being a stickler for safety. It's not the best angle to see the whole press, anything like that. I can still see some things from here. So right out the gate, he lowers the bar. He's got a single man handoff. That's pretty impressive. He is tucking a little bit. I'm not a huge advocate for really tucking, like trying to tuck like this, because you have to transition from this to this at the top. That's a lot of movement from going from tucked to flared at the very top for lockout. So if you can limit how much you tuck. So I'm a fan of tucking like a little bit, like right here. Not this, not benching like this, but this kind of right here. I use my lats as a guide. I get my lats nice and flexed. And that when you flex your lats, your arms get pulled in automatically anyway. So I can use my lats as a guide to kind of like let me know exactly where my tuck needs to be. I don't want to over tuck. So if you were desperate to get a weight down in a bench shirt, the whole rule of thumb is tuck more, and that will allow you to touch easier. So he's coming down to what looks like, from here it looks like a 2-board. He gets a press call from his buddy. A little bit of a lag on his right side. The right side seems to kind of lag on the way up. I've had that problem a lot. A lot of times, if you're having trouble with one of the arms functioning during a bench, it's oftentimes tied into your shoulder. I've had shoulder impingements that affected the lockout capability of my entire arm. So this arm would lock out, and this one was just dragging behind me because I had an impingement up here. So oftentimes it's not, according to my chiropractic fellow, it's not. So if you have pain or a disability or something going on here, it's not necessarily that something is injured in this spot. It's sometimes often something below, above, right? Above or below the site. So if you can't lock something out, it's not oftentimes a tricep issue, it's a shoulder issue, something above it that's causing this not to function correctly. So a little bit of lag, but if you look at where the bar starts and then the bar ends, he comes up to the exact same position. So this is a fully locked out bench, training bench, off of what seems to be a 2-board, so that's great. Again, it looks like it's single ply, it's a katana. So I'm going to look at his leg position. I'm really big on leg position. In the last video, you saw the gentleman in his basement had a very kind of a wide spread out stance. That is how I like to see bench presses being done. This gentleman has his legs really tucked up underneath the bench, up on the toes. And the thing with that position is, you can see if you kind of slow it down, but if you see him during the press on the way up, his legs are kind of shaking a little bit back and forth, real shaking. He's really trying to leg drive, yes, but also stabilize the load. So here's the thing with the tucked underneath the bench position, and this is why I don't like it. If you're coming up on a bench, let's say your max effort bench, you're in a shirt, it's really fucking heavy, and you're coming up and something is off. Something happens, it's off, it's going back and forth like this, and you're tucked underneath the bench with your legs. You have no correction here. Now, adversely, if your legs were nice and wide, like a football player or a wrestler, if something's off, you can then correct that with your nice wide base, wide stance. You can have that stability from side to side with a wide stance. The other thing I don't like about the tucked underneath the bench idea is that I ask people, I say, hey, can you leg extension or leg press more weight? And they most of the time they say leg press. That's true. I would argue that everybody can leg press more than they can leg extension. It's a compound movement, multi-joint, as opposed to a single joint leg extension with just one muscle group, the quads. So you're limiting yourself on how much leg drive and leg power you get in your bench based on how much your quadriceps can leg extension. So if you get your legs nice and wide and out front in front of you a little bit more and wide, you can have the whole power of your entire lower body with a leg pressing position rather than a leg extension. So that's the other thing too. And oftentimes what I'll do is I'll come up behind somebody, I'll have them lay down on the bench. I'll get behind them where the head judge would be. I'll put my fists on the bench on their shoulders right here. I'll say, okay, push me. Like push me up the bench. I'll have them take their normal legs underneath the bench position. And I'm like, you're not even pushing me. I can barely feel you, because they're trying to extend and they don't have any power. So, okay, now, just for demonstration's sake, get your legs out from underneath the bench, come wide and out, and kind of in front of you a little bit. Okay, now push me. And they start pushing my fists up the pad because they have so much more power from their entire lower body structure, not just the quadriceps. So that's the other thing. When I see people that want the tucked under the bench position with their legs, it's like, yeah, sometimes it's more comfortable for the person, especially if you're kind of inflexible. When you go wide, it tends to really kind of put some pressure on the hips. and I know that myself. I'm one of the most inflexible people out there, but I can still arch pretty good and use my lower body. But I always argue that I really think you can bench a lot more weight simply by changing your leg position to something that has more stability and more lower body power and drive during the bench. Again, this is a full body lift. When you're trying to bench the most weight possible, it's like a squat laying down, full body lift. So why limit yourself to just quadriceps? Use the entire thing, use the entire lower body. The one argument they have for that position is maximum arch capabilities. You can maintain the biggest, most powerful arch in your back with the tucked under position, and that's great and all. I think there's a healthy balance of both. You can have your legs wider and out in front of you with a massive arch, so you get the best of both worlds. You have a huge arch with maximum leg drive. So that's a rabbit hole I went down on leg position. Otherwise, again, I see kind of a launch off the board, and then kind of a hesitation on the lockout. So it comes off the boards with some speed, and then it stops. And there's this kind of a little bit of a kind of a bobble, kind of this fight on the lockout. Again, that comes back to the first video. If you're coming down to the boards, stop calling it a board press. It is a board extension. Take that wiring harness out and plug a new one in. Start thinking about these things as board extensions, not board presses. When you press off of boards, when you press limited range of motion, you're not teaching your body to do the correct thing full range. If you come down to a board and you extend off the boards, then when you go full range, your body knows how to press and extend, just like that. So I would like to see touch the board, activate the triceps, and then extend and press the weight off the board with a tricep dominant press. All right, that's going to do it. That's 3 videos. The number 3 bench advice, bench critique video here on the channel. If you want me to critique your bench, DM me on Instagram. It's Kolbstrong. My IG handle is Kolbstrong. You can DM me your videos. I will critique them and put them here on YouTube. Give you some advice, things I would change, things you're doing good at, things I would do different, things like that. So thank you all for being here again. We'll catch you next time.